Over the past few months I've been working on a couple indie game prototypes in my spare time. I've always wanted to try making devlogs about them, but I struggled with the confidence, the motivation and holding myself actually accountable. I want to change that, so I am actually making these devlogs to help me with that. I'm still kinda new to making this type of content, so if you have any feedback, leave it in the comments. I would really appreciate it. First, I'll do a little introduction about myself, and then I will go over the core idea of the game. After that, I want to talk a little bit about my current progress, and lastly, I want to go over my future plans for the game. If you want to skip to any specific part in this video, there are timestamps in the description for you to jump to. So, a little bit about myself. For me, making games didn't start with an actual engine. It started with making custom maps on Minecraft for me and my friends to play after school. This eventually led to me studying software engineering and learning how to make games both in Unity and later Unreal and Godot as well. Right now, I definitely prefer working in Godot, both for its ease of use and how lightweight it is. So far, I've worked on a non-Euclidean puzzle game, a cozy game about recording silly videos about creatures in a forest, and going insane making a deck builder roguelike auto battler. I've kept stalling making this until my game was good enough to show, in my opinion. However, that just meant I was infinitely waiting, and eventually I just decided to just make it. I don't really like watching those devlogs that already have a 95% finished game. Instead, I want to showcase the actual development process, from placeholders to a finished product. So, what is this game actually about? This game is currently under the working name of Flask Fortune. It is a cozy, life-skilling RPG focusing on gathering materials and using methods such as alchemy to transform those materials into products that the player can sell in their own shop. If you've played MMOs such as Final Fantasy XIV, Black Desert Online or New World, when it was still online, you might be familiar with the term lifeskilling. In case you are not, lifeskilling usually refers to out-of-combat activities a player can do within an MMO. These activities usually include things such as gathering, fishing, cooking, trading, farming and housing. When playing those games, these systems always drew me in the most, and I've always wondered how a game built around those systems would feel when it's in a cozy single-player RPG style like Stardew Valley or Animal Crossing. The core loop of the game is simple. You gather resources, combine those resources into new items, and then you sell those newly made items in your own shop. This loop is then combined with many different types of gatherable items, different crafting methods, a housing system disguised as a shop, and progression mechanics such as levels and gear. I don't want to go too in depth into specific mechanics for now to keep this video on the shorter side, but I have already planned out a lot of different systems to further augment this core loop. So what is actually there? The first core mechanic I worked on was gathering. The idea is simple. If the player is nearby an object that can be gathered, the player can click on it and obtain the items. To keep it somewhat engaging, I want to implement small mini-games for each type of gathering. But for the sake of early prototyping, I decided to leave this out for now and focus purely on the core mechanic. So I started programming a simple setup. Each gatherable object would get a custom-made resource in the engine, containing the name, the type of gathering, and another resource called a loot table, which covers what items the player would get rewarded with, how much, and how often. If the player is nearby a gatherable object and is hovering over it, that object then becomes highlighted. If the player clicks on the object, a short timer starts, and after it is completed, the gatherable object vanishes and items based on that loot table appear in the player's inventory. Oh yeah, an inventory. That's actually quite important in a game like this. The inventory is a section of the game that the player will spend a very long time looking at. So it's actually quite crucial the player enjoys interacting with this inventory system. There are a lot of design decisions needed to be made around it, like should the size of the inventory be limited, how much of one item the player can hold, or how is the inventory actually presented to the player. Each and every one of those answers can drastically impact how the player not only interacts with the inventory, but also how different systems interact around it. Initially, I wanted to make an inventory system similar to what you might find in a Pokemon game. The player would have a near infinite carrying capacity and every item is neatly showcased in a list of different categories. I designed the inventory system like this initially because my primary design philosophy around it was convenience. I made two resources in Godot, one called the inventory slot and the other called the inventory. Inside the inventory slot would be a reference to an item resource for the item inside of it and a variable for how much of that item is actually in that slot. The inventory resource was then just an array of inventory slots. I then worked on a bunch of functions for the inventory, like adding and removing items, finding items, and how much of a specific item does the player have. After programming this, it worked, but I quickly figured out that only convenience was the wrong approach for this game. There also needed to be some friction, otherwise there is no incentive to engage with other systems as much. I eventually settled on the following. Every item is still organized neatly in their own category, so the player doesn't need to play inventory Tetris all day, but each item has a weight value attached to it. Once your inventory is too heavy to carry, the player will move slower and eventually cannot insert any more items into it. I also want to add a search function to it, for when the inventory becomes incredibly large and items become difficult to find. Next up was crafting. This was actually a lot more difficult to get a good design for, and I'm not even sure this will be the final iteration of it. For now, I wanted it to be simple, something you could maybe even automate later in progression, a sort of set and relax while watching the items roll in. I once again used Godot's resource system to make this mechanic work. I made a crafting recipe resource and inside of it is once again an array of inventory slots for the ingredients. It also contains another custom resource for the recipe results. Additionally, it also has a couple data variables like the method used, at which crafting station it can be made, and how long it takes to finish. The crafting resource is a combination of two different loot tables, one which is the main results of the recipe, and the other which is for potential byproducts that the recipe might have but are not guaranteed. Once again, I programmed some functions into this that would interact with the resource system to make it all work. Lastly, I wanted to make the project look a bit better. I am self-admittedly not an artist and don't have an artistic background, so learning art actually took a lot of time for me. During this time, I also experimented with a few different art styles, different from top-down 2D pixel art, like an isometric view or pixelated 3D. But eventually I settled with this top-down 2D pixel art view. Yeah, it's basic, but it's also iconic and it really fits the style of game I am going for. Finally, I made a day and night cycle. Using a mat function to determine the time of day, I gradually move across a canvas modulate to change the coloring of the entire scene. I then added lights to the scene where applicable and used an inverse of the same mat function used for the canvas modulate for the lighting, so that the lights are disabled during the day and gradually become brighter during the night. As for the future, I have much already planned out. Trust me, I am maybe a bit too ambitious with the project, but that's why I love it so much. A not so short list includes scheduled events, season, weather, minigames for every gathering type and maybe even crafting type, shop management, dynamic customers based on what you sell, special NPC requests, fishing, farming, cooking, an adventurous guild, a merchant guild, an alchemist guild, all with individual reputation systems, functionality and rewards. Animal and monster hunting, a leveling and experience system, a gearing system and so much more. Yeah, maybe I am overscoping a bit. Regardless, for the short-term goals, I want to spend a lot more time making the game look better and feel more alive. I want to work on world building and lore while also expanding the playable area and make different areas for the player to explore. I also want to further expand the lighting system, add water to the game and just overall add more movement to the scene. Anyway, that's it for now. I want to try and make these videos once every 1 to 2 months, but I won't make any promises. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching and hopefully I will see you in the next devlog.